On Thursday, June 26, 2008, 15 students trained by the Leadership Institute became the face of D.C. versus Heller, the Supreme Court case that ended the absolute ban on gun possession in Washington, D.C. The students applied lessons in political activism they learned from the Leadership Institute as members of independent campus groups participating in the Institute's Campus Leadership Program. These conservative activists stayed up all night crafting hand-drawn signs featuring bold statements declaring their support for an individual rights interpretation of the Second Amendment. The morning the decision was to be announced, they gathered and headed downtown to rally on the steps of the United States Supreme Court. Little did they know that their preparation would shape the gun debate on a national and even international scale. When the small group arrived at the court, they were stunned to discover that they alone had come out in support of the conservative view. They successfully executed the tactics they'd learned at the Leadership Institute. Their signs and enthusiasm drew the rapt attention of photographers and cameramen. Leftists opposed to gun rights stood with dour expressions holding small, unremarkable yard signs with only their group's logo. The students' training paid off. Nearly every major newspaper across the country, and even a few foreign papers, featured the conservative students' faces, signs, and flags. The day after the decision, the students discovered their images on at least 19 newspapers, including the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and even USA Today. The students utterly transformed the media's coverage of the debate. As much as it may have pained the liberal media, they couldn't help but recognize these Leadership Institute students were the true news story of the day. Their signs reading, "Legalize the Constitution," and "If guns kill people, do pens misspell words," were a much better photo op for the media than the small printed placards the left unemotionally held. The trained activists with youthful faces, energetic chants, and signs defying the government to come and take it were a magnet for TV cameras and photographers from Reuters and the Associated Press.
Overturned Washington, D.C.'s ban on handguns. Woo! Finally!
Were it not for those well-trained students, the press coverage would have looked dramatically different.
Take our rights! We say no! DC gun ban has to go!
But rather than photos and headlines about radical leftists demanding more gun control, the nation saw just the opposite. Young, engaged students applying their Leadership Institute training vividly to represent conservative values to a captivated media. These young activists influenced coverage of the gun debate to an extent far beyond what any of them expected. Conservative activists with initiative and preparation win for conservative causes and candidates when they apply the lessons they learn at the Leadership Institute.